What's up, everybody, and welcome to the iReach podcast. I'm your host, Paul Robinson, founder and CEO of ConstructReach, a national consultancy and initiative that aims to diversify the construction, design, and innovation industries and empower a younger generation. Every single week, we are here merging education, industry, and culture with a variety of featured guests that you do not want to miss. So let's go, iReach. All right, what's up, everybody? Paul Robinson is back with you, and I've got a special guest today, Miss Nelly Augustyn. Nelly, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Paul. I'm so excited.
Yes. Super excited to have you on. You know, we got a chance to do some things during 2020, during COVID, to bring visibility to this industry of construction and design, right? Because they really go hand in hand. And just so happy, you know, as we've gotten this iReach podcast started up and going, to create, you know, more visibility and more awareness about the different career pathways that exist within this industry. Super excited for you to be on this as well. So, you know, we're going to get into it, talking about, you know, what you guys do, really bringing awareness to the architectural side of things, the design side of things. So just go ahead and kick us off here. Tell us a little bit about you and your journey and how you got into this specific career.
I would love to share that. So thank you, Paul, for the introduction. Again, my name is Nelly Augustyn, and I am an architect and also a senior managing director. I work at Chipman Design Architecture, and I actually celebrated my 16-year anniversary just a couple of Sundays ago there. And I started in the industry right after getting my undergrad in 2004. And Paul, I don't know if you remember in 2004, but like the iPhone wasn't even a thing back then.
Yes.
So do you remember having to page through books and encyclopedias for information? And that's how we got through life back then, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you taking me back. Right? I can remember just sitting in a library and going through the catalog and just studying that way and really just having a ton of books just to access information and resources. Now you just got everything at the click of a button.
Exactly. And so you know, the information, the availability to the information, what was architecture back then was not available to me. So it was actually my first exposure to the industry was through my uncle. He happened to be working at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and he knew a bunch of professors. And then at the time, I don't remember his exact words to me, but they were something like, "Oh, they're an interesting bunch of characters, Nelly, and I kind of feel like you would fit in." And actually, as a matter of fact, Paul, I was listening to one of your last podcasts, and it was talking about biases, and in reflecting on making the choice to go into architecture, you know, back then in 2000, after I got out of high school, I think that's actually what I was doing is I was using those biases to look for a place where I felt like I would belong, where I felt like I would be comfortable with the people and the environment and the things back then. And so that's really how I got my foot in the door.
Wow. Yeah. So no, that is good. Thank you for sharing that. You know, one of the things that we like to hear through these various stories, because we're always kicking off. One of the things that I like to do with our guests is to start off with this general question, right? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the industry. And, you know, one of the things that we see is that, you know, you have this sort of pivotal moment where either it was introduced or there was an experience that a young person was able to have that really began to set the trajectory of them going into a specific career path, you know, into this industry. And so, you know, when you were in college, when you were getting your undergrad, like that is a huge transition in life, just in general, without even trying to factor in what you're going to do, right? Going from adolescence to young adulthood, you're moving from, you know, being with your parents to being an independent young adult and trying to make it on your own. That's already a huge window in life that has a ton of responsibility, right? That comes with a ton of anxiety at times. Like, what am I going to do? How do I get this right? And so when you think about, you know, your uncle introducing this to you, that is very important because, you know, having that early exposure, but then also having someone that you have a relationship with in your network, in your case, in your family, that can introduce this opportunity to you was pretty big. Wouldn't you say so?
That's absolutely right. And so what I spent college figuring out was that the right group of people? And how did my uncle know that that was the sort of right fit for me? You know, what are those things that clue you into the fact that you're going down the right career path? And it was really little things to me, and the kind of things that I love to point out to my kids and to like the local schools when we work with them. It was little things like, I was a critical thinker. And how did I know I was a critical thinker? Well, I was a puzzle solver, right? So
Yeah.
it was Legos as a young person. It was jigsaw puzzles as a young person. It was crosswords in my, in the college years. And so when I started going to school and I saw that my professors were engaging in like similar activities, and that we had similar interests, that we were interested in art, that we were students of art really since we were young, then I knew, okay, this is a place that I feel comfortable with, and this is where I want to pursue a career path. And there are so many in the field of architecture and construction, right, Paul? Like you said earlier, there's not just this big architect term, but there's so many small paths that you could branch off in after you get that initial architectural degree as well.
Yeah, no, and thanks for bringing it up, because that's a good segue, Nelly, into just talking through, maybe what some of those different career pathways could look like. Because I would say when we think about construction and design, when we think about, architectural and engineering and things of that nature, sometimes there's just a limited understanding of the different careers that you can actually take underneath the umbrella of construction and design. And sometimes you don't know those until you have that exposure, until you get in the industry, or unless you have a relationship with someone who can speak in a very informed way to let you know, hey, this may be all that you know, right, from the outside looking in, but speaking from an insider's perspective, these are the different routes that you can take, right? And that's one of the things that we want to bring visibility and awareness to. So talk to us a little bit about that. Unpack architecture, right?
Yeah.
For us. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's a big word, and not a word that terrible many of us are familiar with. Like I said, I wasn't familiar with it growing up. We didn't deal with architects. There was nothing that we needed an architect for. We shopped at our stores, we ate at our restaurants, we had a home. None of that was anything that we had any part in. And so if it wasn't for my uncle, I wouldn't have been introduced to it at all. So then once I was introduced to it, it was figuring out what that was. And so architecture really gets broken down into specialties these days. So there's no one architect that works on all of those things that you experience on your daily life, on your house, on your restaurant, on your stores. These days, there really are specialties. And so, for example, at our firm, we specialize nationwide in retail, restaurant, and hospitality. But myself personally, for the 16 years that I've been at Chipman, I've been specializing on retail. Because we're really fundamentally, we're relationship people really here at Chipman Design Architecture, and we love our clients and we love our families and we love our long-standing relationships. And so once I got into retail and once I got to know my team, once I got to know my clients, I was so far invested that I wanted to help them along for as long as I could and basically stay connected for as long as I could. And so once you start in on a career in architecture, you can branch out and look into the different types of architectures that they are. So if you're interested in residential and working, on that scale with the families to build their homes, that's fantastic. If you're more interested in the educational sector of it, if you're interested in how schools come together, how labs, how the science labs, how the computer labs, how the kids get to their gymnasiums and back. If you're interested in that, you can pursue that form of architecture. There's obviously the retail, the excitement of the stores that we shop in and the salons that we get our hair done in, and then the restaurants, where we eat. And so there's so many different forms of architecture. The most important thing, though, is to really stay connected to, I feel like, the people that are in the industry. Because, back when we didn't have those iPhones, we couldn't research on our own. So we had to learn from each other. Now we can research a lot on our own, but there's only so much that we could do on our own as well. We need that support system. We need those mentors. We need to stay connected with the people that are doing those things, to be able to ask questions, to be able for them to share and instill their knowledge with us, so that we can make help those people help us make the right choices on our career paths.
No, that is good. Yeah, thank you for just unpacking that a bit, because when you think about construction and architecture, it's so broad, right? Where we just allow those words just to kind of serve as, okay, well, this is just one thing that you can do, right? And we don't understand how it's multifaceted and it can be split up into different careers and different categories.
That's right. And if I can break it down maybe just a little bit more, Paul, so like what does an architect do? And so I had a really interesting experience recently where I went to my daughter's 5th grade classroom and I told the math teacher, I was like, you know what? I said, I was sitting through, because I also have kindergarten age twins, and the twins this year got up to the microphone and each of them said what they wanted to be when they grow up. So of course there were a dozen teachers, there was a Starbucks barista, there was a principal, but you know what? There were no architects. There wasn't a single plumber, electrician, carpenter, contractor. There was nobody like that. And so I went to parent teacher conferences that year and I said, you know, let me come to your classroom and let me share with like the 5th graders. I feel like that's an age that's like old enough to like get it, you know. Let me share with them what an architect does. And, you know, hey, it's math class. So let me apply the fact that you're teaching fractions this year to a tape measure. And let me show them how to use a tape measure and why it's important this year that they learn their fractions and how to use a tape measure, because maybe someday they'll be architects. And so I really broke it down for them in a sort of, I think, easy, digestible way that maybe our audience would appreciate. And it's really, so we do design the spaces that we all function in on a day-to-day basis. You know, who puts the teacher's desk in that room where the teacher's desk sits, right? Who figures out how many doors you need to get out of a classroom safely? Well, that's an architect. Have you, Paul, for example, the last time you were leaving like a Michael's or a Five Below or an Ulta, when you were leaving the store, do you remember which direction you pushed the doors in?
Oh my gosh. Out, right?
Right. So we design, as architects, we design safe spaces for our occupants. So like now imagine you were in that Ulta and then Michael's and some emergency happened. Everybody had to get out and there was 100 people in the store, right? And all of a sudden Paul goes to the door and instead of pushing out with 100 people on his back, he tries to pull the door and there's 100 people on your back. That's tragedy, catastrophe waiting to happen. So that's one of the big things that we do as architects. And when I say we design safe spaces, we design safe spaces for people to be able to get out in case of an emergency. We also design spaces that are accessible and inclusive. I think one of the highlights of my career, and I've been working for Ulta Beauty for many, many years now, and there was a social media post with a young girl in a wheelchair, and she was standing outside of one of our Ulta stores, and the image in their marketing banner was another girl in a wheelchair. And it gets me all like worked up when I think about it, because as architects, we help put that store there, right? We helped get that girl the visibility, you know, and help build that brand, you know, for over so many years to be able to make a statement like that and an impact like that. But how is that girl in a wheelchair shopping that store? You know, is she able to get around as easily as my daughter is on her, you know, mobile 2 legs? And the answer is she is, because as architects, we make sure those aisles are wide enough. We make sure the transitions on the floor are smooth enough. We make sure there are ramps from the parking lot all the way into the store so that, you know, my daughter can shop with the girl in the wheelchair and that they know they're in an equal space, you know, and have the same opportunities. So that's a little bit of what an architect does. Yes, of course, we get to do the fun stuff like pick the lights and the colors on the walls and the wallpapers, but we work with designers to do that as well. So I think that's a really important caveat to looking into architecture as a career is there's a spin-off in the design world. And so the architects, they focus on the constructability of it. Like, how is that building going to go together? What are those details that I need to get into the hands of my contractor to get it built? And then there's the design part of it that focuses more heavily on sort of like the finishes and the finished product of it.
Yeah. You know what? That is really good, Nelly. Thank you for just bringing that example up, because one of the things that I think we miss a lot that we want to bring visibility to, especially through this podcast, is connecting this industry to everyday life. And when you think about a younger demographic, they are very missional oriented, right? Hey, can I work for a company that cares about the things that I care about, so that I feel like I can take my whole self right into the workplace, and there is this equal balance between my profession and what my heart lends toward, right, and what it bends toward.
Right.
And when you talk about designing, yes, there's the pretty things and the cool features or what have you, and the wow factors that you get a chance to do, which is great. But also being able to create spaces that allows for others to feel as if they've been thought about, right?
That's right.
And when you think about the whole DEI piece, but really bringing up the equity piece, the equity piece speaks to, hey, everybody having accessibility, everybody having, right, the equal footing, if you will, and support and access to resources just like everybody else. And from a design standpoint, from an architectural standpoint, when you think about creating spaces and creating safe spaces, even for those who may be disadvantaged in one way, form, or the other, it's creating a space that also allows for them to maximize their experience as well, so that we do have equitable experiences in defined spaces.
That's right, 100%. And so my hope for the industry and for the young people coming into it is that they hope to join that type of, inclusive environment. And at the same time, I feel like our industry needs more diversity, needs more people in those demographics to help make that more of a reality, right? 20 years ago, just about 20 years ago when I started, it was and still is, it's a heavily male dominated industry. And so I wish that more women, more young ladies would join the profession and join the industry. And so, because it would only help, like you said, Paul, carry that equity through into the design. Because the more perspectives we have, the more people are pushing for inclusive design, the more it will actually get integrated into the built world, because it's a fast moving industry. It ebbs and flows, right? When times are good, there's cranes in the air, there's rooftops going up, you see barricades on the sidewalks and fencing, in the Target parking lots and renovations, and pardon our dust. That's when times are good, times are great. But it also, has downtimes too, right? When times are bad, also the construction industry slows down. And so the more diversity we have, the more women in the industry, I think just the better it will be.
Yeah, and there's also that piece where you connect the two as well, because there is a connection between diversity and innovation as well. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that we understand like the importance of having people sitting around the table that are coming and looking at things through a different lens, that are coming to the table with different presuppositions or what have you, and different experiences. And those different points of views helps drive innovation.
That's right. That's right. I had a really special moment with a client the other day. If you can imagine, after 16 years at Chipman, it was one of the first times I was on a call with a client, and it was their director of construction. It was their construction project manager. It was their construction manager in charge of contracts. It was myself and one of our architects, and it was all women on the call. And I just stopped and paused before we went any further. And I said, ladies, I have to call this out. Look at the screen. This is amazing. I mean, it's unfortunately so infrequent that it happens, but how amazing that we're even here, because 16 years ago when I started, that was unheard of. And I would love if that carried through to the construction side of things, because there I feel like there is even a larger bridge, especially between genders. It's very male dominated. And the message is that the industry wants women. They want young women. They want professionals in that demographic. They need it.
Yeah, no, that is good. That is so true as well. So, Nelly, when you think about, starting this pursuit of architecture in college and being at Chipman for the past 16 years, what's been your proudest moment thus far?
Oh, gosh. There's so many little ones. And the default answer should probably be when I walk into one of my projects with my kids and the kids say, Mama, this is your store. And I know that they don't mean like, this is your favorite store to shop at, but they mean like, Mama helped build this store. So like that should be like the default answer. But really, a couple of weeks ago, I had just a magical moment with one of our high school interns. So another great resource for young people are their teachers, right? Are their programs, are the career paths, that the high school set forth to them. And so the high school reached out to us with a high school student that is looking to pursue a path in architecture. And I was real nervous about taking her on, Paul, because the pandemic, we haven't had any interns for a couple of years. I moved the family out to Arizona. This was going to be a remote situation. I thought, gosh, how am I going to do this? She's not going to be there to shadow me, you know, like she's not going to be in an office. Can I teach her anything? You know, what can I talk to her about? Well, it turned out that because I had to be more thoughtful, because I had that hour that I had to dedicate to her, instead of having her simply breathe the same air and be in the same space as I was, it turned into the most thoughtful few weeks, and we got more out of the program, both she and I, than I had ever had, you know, of any internship experience previous to this. So much so that by the end, I had asked her to sit in on one of our interviews, because we were interviewing summer interns at that point, and I had prompted her, you know, to tell that summer intern what she thought of her internship experience, you know, and how that went. And she called me a mentor, and that was so amazing to me, because I've been called a lot of things, Paul. And, you know, and I'm a mom, and I'm a daughter, and I'm an architect, and I'm all of these things, but those are things that I've pursued, you know, titles that like I've wanted, you know. This was the first time that a title like that had been bestowed upon me after a few weeks of just a couple hours a day, you know, some conversations here and there. And that was such a special moment to me, that I could be at the point in my career where I'm sharing things with the younger generation. It's so satisfying. It really makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we like to do here within this podcast. And this is kind of something that's near and dear to my heart, is when we don't have that representation, right? We don't see African Americans within this industry. We don't see enough women within this industry, and allowing those who have been able to not only enter into the industry, but thrive, and hearing the different stories and how, you know, your careers have begun to take shape in a variety of different ways based on, you know, how you grew up, where you grew up, what you were exposed to, what you had access to, what you didn't. And that is a testament, right, to the different folks that can not only just come within this industry, but to have a successful career. And so when you think about all of the titles that you have, you know, really worked toward achieving, and then just allowing, you know, your wealth of knowledge and your intentionality to essentially kind of give back, you know, and then have that mentor title bestowed upon you, you know, it speaks to the significance of what we need, right, to be providing to a younger demographic, just allowing our experience, right, to be a source of inspiration to a younger audience that is trying to figure it out and trying to determine what they want to do. Right. And sometimes you feel something and you're not able to pinpoint like that feeling. But when you have someone that kind of quote unquote, you know, makes the light bulb go off, if you will, or someone who is able to articulate what you're feeling, give language to what you're feeling, that begins to really just have a huge impact. Right. And so you don't just bestow mentor onto someone that hasn't really done anything significant for you, right? Because that's a very personal title that you attribute to someone. Right. You see yourself being better because of that person. Therefore, you cast upon them, right, this title of mentor. And so that just speaks to the impact and the value add that you've had in a very significant way that's just more than surface, right, to that person, for them to say, hey, no, I see Nelly as a mentor, right? And then that is huge.
Yeah, it's so that you brought up the word articulate, Paul. I think that's so important, especially for young people, because for a young person, I think it can be difficult to even articulate the question. And so they're hearing our conversation and they're saying, oh gosh, well, these people know what they're talking about. And I can't talk like that. I don't, you know, I can't, I'm nervous. I'm an introvert. I'm all of these things. Paul, were you able to articulate and speak the way you do from an early age? Like, is this something that you think you were born with, or is it something that you had to practice? Because I know for me, it's absolutely something I had to practice, until somebody told me that, Nelly, did you know you could practice shyness out of you? Did you know you could practice articulation and speaking? I thought I was listen, I'm simply born this way. Like, I'll never be able to like get up in front of a room and give a speech, without shaking and throwing up or something like this. It wasn't until a mentor told me, you can practice it out of you, Nelly. Just speak with someone and they'll help you through that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's definitely like having people in your life that can reflect back to you what they see in you, and then giving you that encouragement, kind of speaking life into you, letting you know what you can do. Because a lot of times we are our own like worst critic, if you will. And a lot of times, we're so quick to point out what we can't do because we see others who do something well, right? And we forget that, no, they had to start somewhere as well, and so when you have others that are where you want to be, that can say, you know what, I didn't just arrive at this moment. Like, I had to work toward it, and I messed up a lot, but I kept falling forward, right? So every time I got back up, I was a little bit better. And even though it didn't feel good in the moment, those were not losses. Those were just lessons about how to get better. And the more and more I did it, the more confident I grew in it. And the more experienced I began to be, the more wisdom I picked up along the way, just by learning and growing up in it, and or having others in my life that can help me or what have you. And so once you have a person like that you are attached to, that can put, certain things that you think are a disadvantage, right, in the proper perspective, and let you know that, no, there's something there. And even though it's not fully developed yet, you can actually do it. And I see you becoming, whatever it is. And I just want to let you know that you can, and you have what it takes. It's just going to take time to get there.
That's right. And I think that's the whole purpose of our conversation today, is to make connections, right? To find the architect to ask the question of, and maybe the architect doesn't know, but the architect will point you towards the contractor or the plumber or the electrician or the sales rep or the vendor's rep or the designer, whatever. It's making connections and then getting there step by step.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Good. So I know we've talked about just a lot of things here, whether it's having a presence at your kid's school, whether it's somebody bestowing upon you the title of mentor, whether it's being able to create a space that is equitable for all. What has been the biggest challenge? What has been the proudest moment? Right. So yeah. Talk about that, like, because those are two opposite ends, right? Yeah.
Well, we talked a little bit about the proud moments, so let's talk about the challenges. And I mentioned previously that the industry ebbs and flows, right? Yeah. Well, we're in a high peak right now. For whatever reason, it feels a little weird. We're kind of still in a pandemic, but gosh, are we just busy? And so #hiring for all the architects listening today that may already be architects. For goodness sake, Chipman is hiring. And come join the family. But we are challenged with growing our teams at a pace fast enough to keep up with demand, because the industry is so fast paced and there is just so much demand to build, which is super exciting. But we need those young people, which is why we're having the conversation today, to get into the industry, because at some point it's gonna come down, right? It's gonna dip down a little bit, which is fine, but it's gonna come up again in the next few years. And so by the time they're out of college, hopefully, either it's still on the rise or coming back up. And we need them. We need their perspective. We need their bodies. We need them to take us to the next generation of technology. Technology is super, super important in the architectural world. We use programs like Autodesk, AutoCAD, and Revit, and those are super high-tech programs and far beyond my reach at this point. I've been doing it for 16 years. I'm not up on the tech anymore because I have to be up on the management side of it and the nurturing the young people side of it. And so we need those young people to bring that tech to us, to show us what it can do these days, to help us become more efficient and better architects.
Yeah. And you're speaking about it now, but I just want to ask a more specific question. So, right, you said your company is looking for that new wave of talent to come in. What is Chipman Design doing to get in front of that younger audience and to let them know the different careers that are for them and that the company is for them?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we attend regularly university and college career fairs. We're partnered with our local schools. We go to their architectural programs and we do their career fair days at their schools. We do the critiques at the university. So if you go into the architectural program, one of the great things about being in an architectural program is how art-based and how hands-on it is. So instead of writing papers, and essays and sort of being in the books, you're using your hand. So like if you like the feel of a pencil in your hand and you're excited to go to the store and buy a pen and see the thickness of that line and how it feels the first time you put it on paper, then you may be, super apt to joining this industry, because those are the kind of things that we like to do. And so in college, that's a great thing. We build models and it's sort of a very active hands-on, and engagement. Some of the other things we do, so we already talked about hosting interns. So we love to partner with our local high schools and we host interns, in hopes of course, hiring them someday. So my high school intern is joining us for the summer program internship. And then I told her I have first dibs on her as soon as she's out of college. If she doesn't interview with me, I'm going to be really offended, I told her. And so those are some of the things we do to try and partner with the young people. Of course, we're recruiting, actively recruiting all of our social media, hashtag hiring all over the boards. And so we want the young people, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that is good, Nelly. And I think that's a good ending point here for this conversation. Just leave us with some information on how to access your company. So if a young person is listening to this and they want to reach out to Chipman Design or you, how can they contact you?
Absolutely. We're all on LinkedIn. So if you just search Chipman Design Architecture, everyone from our CEO, Lauren Chipman, to myself will come up. Message us on LinkedIn. Absolutely. Find us on the web. So just Google Chipman Design Architecture will pop up right there. There's our contact information on the website. We've got some amazing photos. You get a little bit of feel for our culture. We're very dynamic. And even though we're look like a young group of people, we're third generation owned. So Grandpa Chipman handed it down to his son Chipman, and now Lauren Chipman, who's the daughter, took it over, and with her brought this new surge of sort of energy and technology and the links to social media. And so we're just energized by that, and we're a fun group of people. We focus on family and the health and welfare of our teams. That includes our clients first and foremost, above and beyond anything else. So you can find us everywhere these days.
Good. Well, thank you for joining us today, Nelly. Hope you guys found a lot of value in this episode. I know I sure did. It's always a pleasure to have Nelly on. And so thank you guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks again, everybody, for tuning into our show. Remember, like, share, subscribe to the podcast, and join the movement as we reach to build a better future that we can all be proud of.